Alright, welcome back everybody. We're going to do a tomato review today on this tomato right here. And this is called the Post Office Spoonful. And I don't know that much offhand about it, but I did read some information. There is a history behind this tomato. So all that information will be in the description box. And this video is just going to be focusing on the flavor of the tomato and the taste and everything else. But it does have a little bit of a history. Now, is this a Pimpinellifolium or a Leica persicum? I believe that this is a Leica persicum and not a Pimpinellifolium, but it could be a Pimp. I didn't check the leaf to see if it would be a Pimp, but I think it's a Leica persicum. And the reason why I say that is these aren't quite Pimp-sized tomatoes. These are actually very small cherry tomatoes, and they're rather small, but they could be Pimps. And the reason why I say that is because of the way the seeds are arranged on the inside. So it could be a Pimp, but I'm more under the impression it's like a persicum. Whatever I could scrub up from the internet, I will put in the description below, so you'll be able to find out what it is from there. All right, so let's give you a look at the tomato. As you can see, let's back you out a little bit. As you can see, it's a little tomato. It's a little bigger than a Pimp, as a currant tomato. A little bigger than that, and it's nice and red in color, which Pimps are usually like on the pink side, and the skins are translucent. This is not a translucent tomato, not really. It's got a little bit of translucentness to it, but in general, it's a solid color tomato. And let's show you the inside. Try to get you in the center of my hand, that way I can block the camera and zoom you in. So that's what it looks like on the inside. Alright, and we'll do a weight on it just to give you an idea if there's any weight. I don't know offhand. Let's see if the weight shows up. I'm not sure how much, if these will even show up. These might be too small. Yeah, there's not enough weight for one. We'll put two on there. Two of these tomatoes roughly equal 0.3 of an ounce, just to give you an idea of the weight. These tomatoes ripen very quickly too, by the way, unusually fast. So as soon as they turn red, it's like, oh wow, it's pretty high, guys. That's 8.5 on the bricks. So that's going to be a very, very, very sweet tomato. It's 8.5, guys. That is very high. This is going to be an awkward tasting tomato, so let's give that a taste. Yeah, I taste it right out the gate. Sweetness like you wouldn't believe. Tastes like candy. Wow. I'm going to have to eat a couple of these. It's got a weird undertone taste to it. It almost tastes like some kind of a candy I'm familiar with eating. It's sweet enough to really bring that candy flavor to the surface, really. One more, and then I can do the thing. I gotta measure that on my tongue. I gotta remeasure the tanginess. I'm really focusing on the sweetness because it's really intense. Okay, I got it. Let's do the numbers and see what the numbers say. This paper's starting to get splattered with tomatoes. Sometimes when you clean these tomatoes, the seeds just literally burst and go everywhere. It's just making a mess. Okay, so right out the gate, we're going to talk about the sweetness. Sweetness is incredibly high. I'm going to put that at about a 39 on the sweetness. It was very, very, very high. It was very prominent. It was the dominant flavor of this whole thing. This whole thing had a sweet flavor from beginning to end. My fingers are actually sticky. I mean, this thing is like like eating a piece of sugar cube, you know. It's just very, very sweet. Very high. Tangy part was okay. I'm probably going to put the tangy at maybe a 33. It wasn't very prominent. It wasn't very strong. Most of the tanginess was in the seeds. If you squeeze the seeds out, you're going to lose all that tanginess. It's going to be all sugar. The seeds is the only thing that brought that up to about 33. If you took the seeds out, the tanginess would be down by below 20. So it was really low, high sweetness, low tangy, kind of an awkward combination. So It was still okay. It was just more sweet than tangy, and it's kind of weird. I don't really like that usually with tomatoes. I don't like tomatoes that are sweeter than tangier. I just don't care for that myself, but hey, it is what it is here. I'm being very generous by saying 33 on the tangy. It was actually wasn't even really even that high, but we'll give it a 33 on that one. Now, tomato flavor, it was kind of on the low side from a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest. We're going to say this was about a 4 on the flavor part. It wasn't very high, maybe even 3.5 would be more appropriate. It would be like a 3.5 on the flavor scale. Wasn't very prominent in there, but you can taste a tomato flavor. The aftertaste was, you really got most of your tomato flavor on the aftertaste on the back part of your tongue after you chewed it and swallowed it. And that's where most of the flavor really hung out. But while you're eating the tomato, the prominent flavors was the sweetness and the overtones. We're going to talk about the overtones when we get to it. But tomato flavor itself, the flavor of the tomato was just generally, it wasn't really there. It was like a 3.5, so it was kind of on the low side. And it was just low. That's the only thing I can say. Again, with the tomato flavor, we're talking about the intensity of how strong that tomato flavor was present in that taste test. And we're not talking about whether it tasted good like a good tomato flavor or not. We're talking about the presence of the tomato flavor. How dominant was that flavor in the profile of this review? Okay, so now we're talking about moisture. Now it was pretty moist type of tomato. It was just maybe because these are riper than they should be, but it was really wet, like a real wet tomato. So if I'm going to give that a number, I'm going to put it on a 7. Moisture was a little bit outside the range of where I like it, which would be a 6, 6.5 on the moisture. And I like to be in that number with the moisture, but this is definitely above that. And it was just wet and sloppy, and it just washed everything back, and you were left with a skin in your mouth, basically, when you were done. Now, as far as the tarty and sour, there really was no tardiness or sourness. It was basically a 0. Undertones is strange. I'm going to put that at about 3.5, almost 4 on the tardiness. Was actually almost higher, if not higher, than the tomato flavor itself. Probably go on to 4. I'm probably going to stick with the 4 because it was a little higher. I said the tomato flavor was kind of low on the 3.5 side. This was about a 4. So it was a little higher. The undertones were a little higher than the tomato flavor itself. These undertones had a strange kind of an undertone to it. It tasted like some kind of a candy I've had in the store. Along with that sweetness. The sweetness really brought this undertone to the surface. So it was a very strange kind of candy type flavor. It's all I can say is it had a type of a candy flavor that I've had before. That it's one of those candies you get from the store. I'm thinking those... I don't know the name of them. They're like those little round discs. They come in like a wax plastic sleeve, and they're like these little disc things. I don't know, guys. But it tasted like a candy to me, a type of candy. And it was pretty prominent. And 5, if you really 5 or higher, that's really, it's the undertones are just too overpowering. It's just an undesirable tomato, in my opinion. But this is getting down there close. This was a 4, which is usually unusual. That undertone flavor was pretty much more dominant than the tomato flavor itself. Not much to say about that, anymore about that. As far as the texture goes, it was wet and loose, and basically, you basically popped it. You got all of the juice basically popped out of your mouth. It filled your mouth up with it. A little bit of texture to it wasn't bad, but the skin was left afterwards, and you have to just spit that skin out. You ain't chewing that. It's like chewing. It's just you ain't. It's just nothing but a skin left, and so you blow it out of your mouth. And so because of that reason, I'm going to rate the texture on this thing at about a 4. It's below average, and that skin part that sticks in the end is not really that good. Production, it's okay with the production. I'm actually going to put this thing at about average. It wasn't overwhelmingly productive, but it was okay. It was an okay production for this type of tomato. I would definitely put it at about an average number. Plants can get quite big. They can get 7, 8 feet tall, and they can really put out a lot of bracts. But my plants, they're putting out bracts, but not as much as some of my other tomatoes at this size. So how would I rate this tomato altogether, from 1 being the number 1, 10 being the lowest? I'm going to probably rate this tomato at like a number 6. But 5 would be average. We're talking 6. I'd be a little bit below average. And the only reason why I'm even keeping it up that high is mainly because of the history behind the tomato. And you'd want to grow out more for the history and type thing, and just maintaining that heirloom variety or that open pollinated variety. As far as the over sweetness, it wasn't my thing, but maybe you like very sweet tomatoes. This would probably be a good tomato for you then, if you really like sweet tomatoes. For me, I'm not that much into more sweetness than the tangy part of it. I really like a balance. And so this tomato was just too sweet for me. It also, the texture wasn't that good for me. That's why the numbers are kind of low. The sweet and tangy part was just really off balance. It was just awkward and balanced. Flavor of the tomato was a little low. Moisture was a little too high. No tardiness at all. Undertones were definitely way too high for a tomato. Though what I will say about the undertones is it wasn't an unpleasant taste. It did have this candy flavor to it for an undertone, but that was the prominent flavor of the tomato. I want, when I eat tomatoes, I want to taste tomatoes. I don't want to taste a berry. This tasted more like a berry than it did a tomato, though the aftertaste was tomatoey. That undertone was like a berry or a candy type of flavor. So again, that's not my thing per se, but maybe you would like that kind of a flavor. So it might be worth a grow for you. But as far as my rating on this thing, I can't go any higher than 6. I really, unless I grow this out next year and maybe we can change up those numbers a little bit, it's pretty much going to stay the way it is. And that's really it. That's all I can say about the post office tomato. What I'll do is I'll leave all the information that I got in the description below. You can read about the post office spoonful tomato, and you can also read about it on my website. Now keep in mind, whenever I do updates to the descriptions, I just do them on my website, and I don't necessarily update the YouTube video. So because of that reason, you might not be getting up-to-date information. So always check the website if you're doing research on this tomato. Always check the website and see if I updated the description and the website for the latest details, okay? I'll also leave a link in the description below where you can pick up seeds for this if you decide that you want to grow it. I will sell seed for it, and you can get them there. So don't forget to visit hrseeds.com for these seeds, all right? And that's it. That's your tomato review for the Post Office Spoonful tomato for 2020. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care, guys.